Hi there. In this video, we're going to center the roll the dice button at the center of our linear layout. So let's go back to our activity underline main.xml, and inside this linear layout, we're going to add a button. So we have two options. We can either add the button code XML code here inside the linear layout, or we can just switch to the design tab. So for educational purposes, I'm just going to add the button here as an XML code. I'm going to open a tag and I'm going to type in here button. Okay, so these are the two attributes that are required for our button. We get these attributes from this Android namespace, the namespace that we added for this linear layout. So because this button is now a child of this linear layout, it can access these Android namespace attributes, because the Android namespace attribute is added here to this linear layout. Okay, so for the layout width, I'm going to use match parent. So notice that in our design, the button, the width of the button is match parent. It's going to take the width of the parent. There is some space here at the left and right. That's because of the margin or sometimes the padding that you learn later. For now, we just want to set the width of our button to be match parent. And the height I'm going to set as wrap content. So this means that the height of the button is going to be as big as the content inside of it. And now let's set the text. So I'm going to type in here text, and I'm going to choose the text attribute. So the text of this button is going to be roll the dice. Okay. And here it is, the text. Inside this preview, you can see what's going on here. Next, I'm going to specify the color of this button. So I'm going to type in here background, and we're going to use a hexadecimal color here. I'm going to let you know about a website that we can use in order to access the hexadecimal colors, and we can add the code here. So just open your web browser and search for RGB colors. And then here, just click on the first link that appears on the website. Here it is, the link of the website, rapidtables.com. I'm just gonna click on it, and you will be guided to this page. So here, you can choose a color, and you can see the hexadecimal color. The hexadecimal color appears here, hex, and it starts with a hashtag and a code. The first two numbers is for the red color, the second two numbers is for the green color, and the third two numbers is for the blue color. So that's why it is called RGB. R stands for red, G stands for green, and B stands for blue. So we've got another two numbers. So that two numbers is for the alpha of the color. You'll learn more about that. For now, we just want to choose a color for our button. So you can choose whatever color that you want. So for example, I want to choose this one. So you can see that it starts with CC00 and 66. So let's go ahead and open our Android Studio. And then here, as the background color, I'm going to choose hashtag CC0066. So this is the background color. Now I'm going to set the text color of my button. So the text color is going to be hashtag FFF. So FFF stands for the white color. Okay, we don't have to put 6 numbers here. So we just put FFF as the white color. And if you want to set it as the black color, you can say 000. Okay, so I'm going to choose FFF. That's it. Now I'm gonna put this button at the center of this linear layout, center vertically, because we know that the orientation of this button is actually vertical. So how can I set this button to be at the center of this linear layout? So we're gonna learn about that later. For now, I'm gonna add the other element here. So we've got a linear layout horizontal here that contains two image views. So you can see that the image views are positioned horizontally. So that's why I know that the orientation of the linear layout that contains these two image views, these dice images, is actually horizontal. So let's go back to Android Studio. Here I'm gonna again use the XML code to add the linear layout and the dice images. So here I'm gonna open a tag, and then I'm gonna type in here linear layout. So the layout width is going to be match parent, and the height is going to be wrap content. And then I'm gonna go inside this linear layout. So you can see that we've got a separate tag for this linear layout. So this means that I can put some items inside this linear layout. Sometimes our container, our layout, is actually self-closed. So what do I mean by that? For example, our linear layout doesn't have a separate tag, a separate close tag, and in that case there is a slash and this closing tag here. So this means that our container or our layout is self-closed and we cannot put any items inside of it. Okay, so in these cases, make sure that there is a separate closer tag for your container. So in this case, I'm just gonna delete this slash and this closing tag, and I'm gonna put the closing tag here. So Android Studio automatically puts this closing tag here for me. So I'm just gonna go inside this linear layout, and now I'm gonna create two image views. Here, let's just create a tag and type in here image view. So the layout width is going to be wrap content, and the height is also going to be wrap content. Notice that an image view is also a container for an image. Okay, so an image view is like a linear layout, but an image view can contain an image. So we don't have to create a separate tag for this image view. We can simply self-close this image view, and we can use the src attribute in order to put an image inside this image view. So I'm going to choose the dice1 as the image of this image view, and then let's create the second image view. So just open a tag image view, and the layout width is going to be wrap content. The layout height is also going to be wrap content, and the src attribute is going to be dice2. So now I want this top image to be at the top, this roll the dice button to be at the center, and this linear layout that contains these two dice images to be at the bottom. How we can do that? So in order to do that, we need to learn about the weight attribute. So here I want you to assume this linear layout, this parent layout that contains all of these elements, I want the height of this linear layout to be assumed as free. Okay, so just imagine that the height of this parent layout is free, and I want each of these elements, for example, this relative layout that contains this image view, I want this relative layout to take one part out of free, and I want this button, the roll the dice button, to take one part out of free, and I also want this linear layout that contains these two image views to also take another one part. So we've got three parts, and I want each of them, each of these elements, to take one part equally. How we can do that? So first, let's go ahead and select this relative layout that contains this top image. Okay, and I want the layout height of this relative layout to be 0 dp. Why? Because I'm gonna use an attribute called weight. So just set the height of this layout height to be 0 dp, and now you might wonder, what is this dp? So dp stands for density independent pixels, and the reason that we use the dp is that we want our element to look good on all devices, because we want our element to be density independent. So in this way, if we have multiple devices with different resolutions, our element still looks good on all of them. So that's why dp is very important. Okay, so let's go back to our discussion. So here I told you that I want each of these elements to take one part out of the free. So again, I want you to assume or imagine that the height of the screen is free. So that's why I told you that this linear layout, the height of it is actually match parent. And the match parent means that it's going to be as big as the the height of the screen. So now here, let me tell you that you can collapse or expand the elements in XML code. So for example, we've got this relative layout. I can just collapse this relative layout by clicking on this Ledo icon here, or I can just click on it again in order to expand it. And we also have this linear layout that contains these two image views. I can collapse it. So here, I want to, again, expand this relative layout. And I set the layout height to be 0 dp. So let's set a value for the weight attribute of this relative layout. So just type in here, weight, layout weight. And here, I want the weight to be 1, because I want this relative layout to take one part out of the free parts of this height of the screen. So let's again collapse this relative layout. And now we've got this button. So I want this button to take one part out of the free parts. So I'm gonna type in here weight, and I'm gonna choose the layout weight attribute, and I'm gonna assign the value 1 as the layout weight of this button. And then we've got this linear layout that contains these two dice images. So I'm gonna expand it, and I'm gonna set a value for the layout weight. So just type in here weight, and let's assign the value 1 as the layout weight of this linear layout. So now here you can see that the height of this button is too much. And the reason for this problem is that we didn't set a value for this layout height. Here you can see that we set the layout height to be wrap content. So I'm gonna set the value of the layout height of this button to be 0 dp. Now the height of this button is set based on the layout weight of this button. And also for this linear layout, let's set the layout height to be 0 dp. And now each of these elements, for example, this relative layout, this button, and this linear layout, each of these elements takes an equal height of the entire height of the screen. But now still, I don't like the height of this roll the dice button. So in order to solve this problem, I can just delete this layout weight attribute, and I can set a value for the layout height. I can just say wrap content for the layout height. We can also assign a hard-coded value for the layout height. So instead of wrap content, we can say 100 dp. So now the layout height is based on this hard-coded value, but I prefer the wrap content. Okay, so now we've got another problem. First and foremost, I want these two dice images to be centered inside this linear layout. How we can do that? So this linear layout here that contains these two dice images has an attribute called gravity. The gravity attribute is going to specify the position of the child elements inside the layout. So we know that these two image views are the children of this linear layout, and I want these children to be centered inside the parent layout, which is this linear layout. So now let's set the value center for this gravity attribute. Now these two dice images are centered inside this linear layout. And also I want this top image to be centered inside this relative layout. So here we've got this relative layout, and inside of it we've got this image view. So here I can add an attribute to this image view that specifies whether this item should be centered in the parent or not. So I can just type in here center, and here we've got two attributes. The first one is layout center in parent and layout center vertical. So let's choose this one, layout center in parent, and then let's assign the value true to this attribute. Now this image view is centered inside the parent, which is the relative layout. So this center in parent is for the relative layout. For the linear layout, you should use other attributes. So remember that each layout has its own attributes, okay? So for example, for the linear layout, we use the gravity attribute to center the children. But for this relative layout, I used this center in parent attribute for this image view, so now it is centered inside the parent layout. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let's go back to our linear layout that contains these two dice images. So now I want you to imagine that the width of this linear layout that contains these two dice images is actually 100. And I want each of these dice images to take 50 out of the 100 as the width. So here, for this image view, for this dice image, I'm going to set the layout width to be 0 dp, and I'm going to add another attribute called the layout weight. So here I want to set the layout width of this image view based on the weight. So I told you that I want this image view to take 50 out of the 100 as the width. So I'm going to assign the value 50 as the layout weight. And I want to do the same for the second image view, for this second dice image. Here, I want to assign the value 0 dp as the layout width, and I'm going to add the weight attribute, and I want this image view to take the other 50 out of the 100. So I'm going to assign the value 50 as the layout weight. So now each of these image views take an equal value as the width of the parent. Okay, this dice image, the first dice image, take 50, and the second dice image also takes 50 of the parent layout. So hopefully that makes sense. This is our layout ready to be worked on. If you go ahead and run your program, you can see the result. So here it is, my application running on the emulator. We've got the image, the top image, the roll the dice button, and these two dice images. In the next video, we're gonna go ahead and code our application.